Behind every villain, there's a victim. And behind every mask, a man who once loved, bled, and believed in justice. The frontman of Squid Game isn't just a symbol of cold control. He's a shattered soul dressed in armor. A former detective, a loving brother, and once a man who gave everything to save the people he loved. Until the world took it all from him. To understand the monster, we must first meet the man. Born in the 1970s in South Korea, Hwang In-ho's early life showed no traces of the darkness that would later consume him. In fact, everything we know about him before the games points to the opposite. He had a younger half-brother named Joon-ho, and their relationship was defined by an act of profound love. In 2015, In-ho's carefully constructed world began to collapse. His wife became pregnant, a moment that should have brought them pure joy. Instead, it became the catalyst for their destruction. She was diagnosed with acute liver cirrhosis, a fatal condition that required urgent and expensive treatment. The medical bills were astronomical, far beyond what a detective's salary could cover, and time was running out. Desperate to save the woman he loved and their unborn child, In-ho made a choice that would haunt him forever. He borrowed money from criminal sources, knowing the risks but seeing no alternative. When his department discovered this, they saw it as corruption, as a bribe. Despite his spotless 14-year record, despite his decorations and service, they fired him immediately. No consideration for his circumstances, no mercy for his desperation. Just cold institutional justice. This betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. The system he'd served faithfully, the institution he'd believed in, abandoned him in his darkest hour. Worse, their self-righteous adherence to rules over human compassion directly contributed to his wife's death sentence. Here was In-ho's first real glimpse into the moral bankruptcy of the world around him. Good people suffering while systems protected themselves. With no job, no help, and a wife slowly dying, In-ho faced the impossible. That's when he learned about the 28th Squid Game, a secret competition where 456 players would compete in childhood games for a prize of 45.6 billion won. The catch? Losing meant death. For In-ho, it wasn't about greed or adventure. It was about survival, about love, about saving the only person who mattered to him. The 2015 Squid Game changed In-ho forever, but not in the way he expected. Based on his later behavior, we can deduce that he likely voted to end the games early. After witnessing the first deaths, he probably wanted to leave with whatever money he'd accumulated to rush back to his wife. But democracy became his curse. The other players, driven by greed, kept voting to continue. Each vote to stay was another day away from his dying wife, another step toward the unthinkable. In-ho survived all 6 games, emerging as the sole victor with 45.6 billion won, enough to save his wife 100 times over. But when he finally returned home, he discovered the cruelest truth of all. It was too late. His wife and unborn child had already died while he was trapped in that island hell, playing games for the entertainment of the wealthy. This wasn't just loss, it was cosmic injustice. He had won everything and lost everything simultaneously. The money meant nothing. The victory was hollow. Worse, in his mind, the greed of the other players had directly caused his wife's death. If they had voted to end the games earlier, if they hadn't prolonged his captivity, maybe she would still be alive. This thought would poison every decision he made going forward. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. In-ho didn't just lose his family, he lost his faith in humanity itself. Every person who voted to continue the games chose money over his wife's life, even if they didn't know it. From that moment, greed became his obsession, and punishing it became his mission. After losing everything, In-ho faced a choice that would define the rest of his existence. He could have used his billions to rebuild his life, to honor his wife's memory, to find some form of healing. Instead, he made a decision that sealed his fate forever. He joined 𝐿-𝐼, the creator of the Squid Games, as his right-hand man. He became the frontman. This wasn't a career choice, it was a form of psychological self-destruction, masquerading as purpose. By becoming the frontman, In-ho ritualized his trauma, recreating it over and over, but now as the one in control. He couldn't save his wife, but he could ensure that greedy people faced the consequences of their choices. He couldn't resurrect his family, but he could punish those who reminded him of the players who had voted to continue. The mask he wore wasn't just a disguise, it was a burial shroud for his former self. Behind that mask, 𝐿𝐴 could perform acts of violence without confronting the man he used to be. He developed what psychologists call emotional desensitization, the ability to witness or commit acts of brutality without the normal human response of horror or empathy. This wasn't natural evolution, it was psychological armor, protection against the pain of remembering what he'd lost. During the 2020 games, we see this transformation in full display. When a player takes a staff member hostage and forces him to remove his mask, 𝐿𝐴's response is swift and merciless. He executes the boy on the spot, not because he posed a threat, but because he broke a rule. This isn't the same man who once hesitated to use force even in self-defense. This is someone who has systematically dismantled his own humanity to survive his grief. The first crack in 𝐿𝐴's psychological armor came from the most unexpected source: love. When he discovered that 𝐵𝐿𝐴 had infiltrated the island, posing as a guard to investigate the games, 𝐿𝐴 was forced to confront the one relationship that predated his transformation. Here was his brother, the man whose life he'd saved with his own kidney, threatening to expose everything. The confrontation on the cliff was a masterclass in psychological complexity. Guns drawn, brother facing brother, 𝐿𝐴 had to choose between his role as the frontman and his identity as 𝐵𝐿𝐴's protector. When 𝐵𝐿𝐴 refused to leave with him, 𝐿𝐴 made a choice that revealed the depths of his internal conflict. He shot his brother, but in the shoulder, not fatally. But here's where it gets interesting. 𝐿𝐴 secretly arranged for Captain Park to rescue 𝐵𝐿𝐴 and take him to a hospital. This wasn't the frontman's decision, this was 𝐿𝐴's. He had to maintain his image as a ruthless leader for his staff, but he couldn't actually kill the brother he loved. The psychological toll was immediate and severe. Later, we see him hallucinating 𝐵𝐿𝐴, hearing his brother ask why he'd done it. This moment represents the first major crack in his psychological defenses. For all his coldness, for all his detachment, 𝐿𝐴's capacity for love hadn't been completely destroyed. It was buried, repressed, but not dead. The guilt he felt afterward, the hallucinations, the visible crack in his composure, these were signs that his humanity was still fighting to survive beneath the mask. When 𝐕𝐢𝐻 returned to stop the games, 𝐿𝐴 made his most calculated and cruel decision yet. He would infiltrate the games himself, disguised as player 001 under the name Young 𝐿. This wasn't just strategic, it was deeply personal. 𝐿𝐴 saw 𝐕𝐢𝐻 as a version of himself before 2015, before the trauma, before the mask. He wanted to prove that everyone breaks eventually, that greed always wins, that his own fall was inevitable rather than tragic. Throughout the games, 𝐿𝐴 manipulated everything from the shadows. During red light, green light, he didn't even participate. He was never in real danger. When it came time to vote whether to continue, he cast the deciding ballot to stay, a cruel echo of his own past when others had made that same choice and cost him everything. But now he was doing it for entertainment, for the sake of proving his cynical worldview correct. The betrayal came during the rebellion. 𝐕𝐢𝐻 had trusted Young 𝐿, had included him in the plan to overthrow the guards and escape. 𝐿𝐴 played along, gained their trust, then turned on them with ruthless efficiency. He killed his own teammates without hesitation, staring coldly at their dying bodies as he shot them. Then he staged his own death, using the death rattle of one of his victims to convince 𝐕𝐢𝐻 that hope was dead. This wasn't just tactical, it was psychological warfare. 𝐿𝐴 wanted to break 𝐕𝐢𝐻's spirit completely to show him that trust was foolish, that even the people you save will eventually betray you. When he revealed himself as the frontman and executed 𝐿𝐴 right in front of 𝐕𝐢𝐻, he was completing the lesson. Caring about others only leads to pain. The most devastating moment in 𝐿𝐴's story comes when he removes his mask for 𝐕𝐢𝐻 and places a knife on the table. This scene is a perfect mirror of his own trauma from 2015, when 𝐿𝐴 had done the same thing to him. The flashback shows us young 𝐿𝐴, terrified and trembling, forced to kill sleeping players to survive. He stabs one player in the throat, but when the man wakes up, panic takes over and 𝐿𝐴 stabs him repeatedly in the chest. The camera reveals at least 5 other bodies. 𝐿𝐴 had been forced to become a killer to survive. But here's the psychological complexity. By recreating this scenario with 𝐕𝐢𝐻, 𝐿𝐴 wasn't just being cruel. He was trapped in what psychologists call trauma reenactment, unconsciously recreating his traumatic experience, but reversing the roles. In 2015, he was the victim, told by 𝐿 to kill or be killed. In 2024, he becomes 𝐿, offering the same choice to 𝐕𝐢𝐝. This reversal gave 𝐿 a sense of control over his trauma, but it wasn't healing, it was ritualized repetition. He believed that if 𝐕𝐢𝐝 made the same choice he had, then his own descent would be justified. He wouldn't be uniquely weak or broken, he would just be human. But when 𝐕𝐢𝐝 walked away, refusing to kill, 𝐿 was forced to confront a terrifying possibility. Maybe he didn't have to become what he became? The look on 𝐿's face when 𝐕𝐢𝐝 leaves isn't anger or frustration, it's sadness, regret, and something close to recognition. 𝐿's final acts reveal the true nature of his psychological prison: survivor's guilt. When 𝐕𝐢𝐝 sacrifices himself to save the newborn baby, 𝐿 doesn't intervene. He watches, and in that moment, he sees the man he used to be, the man he could have remained. 𝐕𝐢𝐝's sacrifice wasn't for money or survival, it was pure selflessness, the kind of love 𝐿 had shown when he donated his kidney to 𝐵𝐻𝐭. After the game's end, 𝐿's actions speak louder than any words. He leaves the baby and the full prize money with 𝐵𝐻𝐭, ensuring his brother can give the child a real life. He visits 𝐕𝐢𝐝's daughter, delivering her father's belongings and the prize money, setting her up for life. These aren't the actions of a man who has lost all humanity. They're the desperate attempts of someone trying to atone for survival. The root of 𝐿's psychological prison lies in a simple, devastating question. Why did he survive when others didn't? His wife died while he was winning money. His unborn child never got a chance at life. 𝐕𝐢𝐝 died protecting an innocent. 𝐿's survival feels like a betrayal of everyone he's lost, and his role as the frontman is his self-imposed punishment. He doesn't enjoy the money he's won. He lives in a tiny apartment despite being a billionaire. He doesn't form new relationships or try to rebuild his life. He doesn't pursue happiness or peace. Instead, he runs the games over and over, as if each death is a small payment on his debt to the universe. A way of saying, I know I don't deserve to be here, but I'll make sure it means something. The final scene of 𝐿 driving past new recruiters in Los Angeles is perhaps the most haunting moment in the entire series. Here is a man who has the power to end the games, who has billions of dollars and complete control over the system, yet he does nothing to stop the cycle. He simply stares as another person is lured into the same trap that destroyed his life. This isn't apathy, it's resignation. 𝐿 has accepted that the world is fundamentally broken, that greed will always triumph over compassion, that people like 𝐕𝐢𝐝 are rare exceptions rather than the rule. He's convinced himself that his role as the frontman isn't just necessary, it's inevitable. Someone has to show the world what it really is, even if that someone is a man who has already lost everything that made him human. The tragedy of Hwang In-ho isn't that he became a monster, it's that he became a monster who remembers being human. Behind that mask lives a man who knows exactly what he's lost, who carries the weight of every death, who performs acts of evil while desperately hoping someone will prove him wrong about humanity. He's not just the front man of the Squid Games, he's the front man of his own psychological prison, a guard who has forgotten that he holds the key to his own cell. In the end, In-ho's story is a warning that good people can be broken, that trauma can become a lens through which we see the entire world, and that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones who were once heroes. The frontman isn't evil incarnate. He's what happens when love turns to loss, when justice becomes revenge, and when survival becomes the only thing left to live for.